First, I'd like to welcome anyone that's new joining today, as well as our returning members. We're happy to have you here. And I'll give you our agenda for today. So first, we're going to go over some of the new resources we have available, as well as in the works. And we'll have a couple of presentations around the client-based class projects that we've been collaborating with two different departments on. Third, we have the Departmental Advisory Initiative and some information around that. A couple updates around our interns and volunteers, as well as a volunteer opportunity for those of you attending SFAA. And then last but not least, we're going to review some of the association responses around our current political and economic climate and the pressures associated with that. And then have some space for discussion along those lines. All right. Sorry, they're trying to admit people while running the slide deck challenge. I might make someone co-host. I'm gonna make you co-host, Ralph. That's cool.
Co-host, sure. Yeah. Fine.
Yeah. So if you can help me admit people as they join. All right, so I'll be reviewing our new resources. So for those of you that are familiar with our tools, we have our job seeker tools as well as our instructor tools. So in the realm of our job seeker tools, we have two that are going to be posted pretty shortly. I just have to send them over to Matt to get on the website. We have a new possible careers tool around museum anthropology. I believe Jason Berg Jackson at IU helped us put that one together. And then we have conducting intercept interviews. So this one's really focused on methods. And I believe Elizabeth and Tim Elefate put these two together, this one together. We also have several in development. So we've got one around storytelling, one around how to choose a good professional headshot. And I think Elizabeth's got several other in the hopper. Next up, we have several new instructor tools that are now currently available on the website. So these ones are posted and available for you to download. We've got one around teaching with op-eds, as well as one around how to implement information interviewing in the classroom as a learning technique. In development, we've got one just that's kind of introduction and overview of our Department Advisory Initiative. As well as one around doing a SWOT analysis, one around client management and brainstorming techniques. So keep your eyes open for that. Also a reminder, we have our Speakers Bureau. So this is a great resource, especially if you do plan on doing some of those informational interviews in your classes. This is a list of 47 practitioners that are happy to speak to you as well as students around their careers and any questions that you've got. And also another reminder around our World of Work blog. We've got some new posts. I think we just have one go up today, so check that out. It's a really great resource. We also have a tool around how to use blogs in your teaching as well under the instructor tools. All right, now we're moving on to our client-based class projects. Amanda Poole, are you here? All right.
I'm here. Hi. Thanks. Yeah, I've really appreciated working with the Anthropology Career Readiness Network this semester. And I can give you a brief overview of what we're doing and where we're at with our class projects. So our program at IUP, we're here in Western Pennsylvania, there are two tracks that our anthropology majors can be on. One is archaeology and the other one is applied anthropology. And so my class that I teach, a 400 level class in applied anthropology, is one of the core methods classes for those students. So they're all required to take this. And what we do in that class is we partner them with a community client to design and conduct some research. And so this semester, the students are working with a nonprofit organization that coordinates the Northern Appalachian Folk Festival in our town. It's a festival that's been going on for more than a decade. They've expanded to have a brick and mortar folk school on our kind of main drag downtown. And they're at a moment of transition for their organization with the recent sudden loss of kind of the guy who pioneered the folk festival. So the students are, we've been looking at, really interesting research about the arts and music-based development in Appalachian communities. We've been talking to our community client. Elizabeth visited our class. We designed a project and got our IRB approval. And now the students are divided into 3 teams. And one team is in charge of intercept interviews, where they are trying to get a survey of people's thoughts about the folk festival and local arts and music. The other team is doing more protracted ethnographic interviews to try to understand the impact and the significance of the folk fest to different people in the community, such as musicians, artists, small businesses, families, that kind of thing. And then we have a team that's creating a video from some of this work, but also from archival footage that's being shared with us by the Folk Fest organizers. And so that's where we're at with our project right now. I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, we can take a minute for some questions. Lisa?
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for sharing this project. It sounds amazing. I have a question about the video portion. Do you find that you need to train the students in how to make videos for this particular part of it?
That is a very good question. So we've spent some time exploring and trying out the equipment available to us through our campus library. So the students have experimented with it. We reviewed some of the foundations of composition and video and audio, but for sure, this is new for us. I'm glad there's a lot of great footage that's being shared with us for the video coming from our community partner. So it takes a little bit of the pressure off of what we're able to create ourselves, but there's some trial and error involved. And we do have actually a lot of student expertise on the back end of this with putting together the video and doing that editing. So that's a skill set that a number of students in the class have. Actually generating new footage is something that we're sort of learning as we go.
Very cool. Thanks.
All right, probably have time for one more question if someone else has a question for Amanda. And I can't see the chat in case anyone asked.
Nothing in the chat, no.
All right, well, we'll move on to our next class project. Susan Squires, you ready?
Yep. You got my slide?
Yep, there you are.
Great, thank you. So we're my organizational culture course is undertaking a project for ACRN. It is primarily focused on the Department Advisory Initiative. And what we're doing for them is for the DAI is some interviews with the departments who have participated in and asked for advising from the DAI. The DAI is starting to get lots and lots of applications for help, and it's an intensive program, and it can be. You need to choose wisely folks that are going to be able to take advantage and are ready to take advantage of the advising. And the goal of the course program project is to determine what criteria make a department ready. And so we're talking with the students, they're all graduate students, and we drafted a proposal, so it was their proposal. We have drafted an interview guide, and they are now reaching out to the departments who have participated or who have had at least been in contact with the AI to talk with them about their expectations for the program, or were their expectations met if they've gone through the process, just to determine what makes a program ready. So, and we're hoping that the deliverable will be a draft tool that DA can use to assess applications. What questions do you have?
Yeah, Cynthia?
Sorry.
Hi. So I have like two questions for Amanda and Susan, if that's possible. So you both talked about working with students in developing the effectiveness or like the significance or meaning of different projects. One for more of a cultural basis, the other one is more of a professional basis. Can you compare and contrast your experiences with each other in terms of working with students regarding what I just said, the following materials that revolve around organization, like professional preparations, and as well as folk festivals in the United States?
Amanda, do you want to go first, or would you like me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I've been running projects through my courses now for the past 15 years. And I primarily work with graduate students. And it's been wonderful. I have prerequisites for them before they take the class. And that is that they have to have had a methods course. So that because I don't teach methods in these courses, it is a prerequisite. And they have to know how to do an interview, code a transcript, analyze the codes for themes. Those are the basic skills that they need to do the project. And I have to say, the students have been remarkable in their ability to produce really worthwhile insights and make recommendations. So they just don't give feedback on this is what we found out, but they actually, in this course, we'll be actually producing a product. And I think that motivates them. That really motivates them that they're giving back something to, for example, DAI, but we've also worked with nonprofits, helping them with better marketing their services. And see, we've worked with on websites for the Heart Association. So I have not had a project that has not turned out really well once we have the base. And so how do I set up the course? The first part of the course is the material. So they have to read the pertinent material on the topic. In this case, it's organizational culture. We use Ann Jordan's book as a foundation for organizational culture, her little business organization book. But we also read all the classics in organizational culture, and then they do the project. And they work in teams. So they don't do this on their own. They always work in either two or teams of 2 or 3 people. They organize themselves. They organize the outreach, the emails. They do the interviewing. There's once they get started, they're on their own, and they really do a remarkable job. So I just can't say enough about having a project like this in a graduate course to help students get hands-on experience.
Thank you so much. And Amanda, do you want to give it away?
Sure. So in contrast, I work with undergraduate students, but similarly, they have ideally taken ethnographic research methods as a very intensive methods class. So they are coming into this class, my applied class, having that background knowledge and having sort of gotten their feet wet, designing and conducting ethnographic research. And then what we do in the applied class is we often use Sam Ladner's book on applied ethnography in the private sector. I find it's just resonates with the students. It's so helpful and so well written. And so we'll use that book as sort of our touchstone while we then develop projects that vary based on who our client is in any given year. And sometimes we do have repeat clients, but it also sort of depends on what's going on in the community and in the region. And like last year, we worked with PA Solar, which is a statewide nonprofit that was seeking to expand its reach into Indiana County. And we're in a rural area in Northern Appalachia. And so you can't take the same kinds of methods and approaches that you apply in urban places and have them work out the same way here. And so that's kind of been the crux of this class and how it's been put together. But I found that it can be a really powerful tool to connect students to the community and to generate a sense of agency. Like students are, doing work that makes a difference. And I think that's what's really exciting about applied anthropology.
Yeah, that's quite impactful. I'll introduce myself when we get to introductions, but thank you all for sharing your insights.
Thanks, Cynthia. And we're not going to do formal introductions out loud, though. When you talk, you're welcome to introduce yourself. But feel free to introduce yourself in the chat too, if you'd like to share.
Well, I can introduce myself right now if you want.
If you can make it
Or
brief.
you prefer to do it later.
You can do it right now. Go ahead.
Okay, so everybody, welcome. My name is Cynthia. I'm a undergraduate student studying anthropology and archaeology at the University of Calgary in Alberta, Canada. So I'm not from the United States. I have an immigrant background. I come originally from the then called Syrian Arab Republic, and I've been fascinated in anthropology and archaeology. I've been involved in several different research projects. I've worked and interned at my university and at different organizations in Calgary. I've done some volunteering in the past and just currently working on expanding my network and seeing if there's like any help for sociocultural anthropologists and archaeologists here in your network among your circles.
All right. Well, thank you, Cynthia, for joining us. We definitely do have resources around that. So definitely check out the website and feel free to reach out to some of those contacts in the Speakers Bureau. I know some of them are on the call today. And yeah, keep a watch on our socials too. We've got several webinars coming up. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the Departmental Advisory Initiative. Ryle, feel free to jump in if you got anything to add on this section. So to provide context, I know Susan already mentioned it, but the Departmental Advisory Initiative is a one-year program that departments can volunteer to participate in. It begins with an intensive 3-day workshop on site where we work with them at really understanding their unique context as well as their own goals that they have and their strengths, weaknesses, and those opportunities and threats, doing a SWOT analysis. And then based on, the findings and feedback that we get there, the departments are tasked with developing their own implementation plan around how to make their curriculum more career ready. So they develop a plan and then we keep them honest by checking in with them quarterly, as well as providing support. If they do run into any barriers and implementing any parts of their plan, they're welcome to reach out to us. And during those quarterly check-ins, we also see if there's any additional support that they need. We have 2 new inductees. I think this brings us up to 8 or 9 participants. So we've got University of Michigan at Dearborn. This is an example where it's a combined department. So there's 3 full-time and 2 part-time anthropology instructors within a larger behavioral sciences department. And their primary goals are to find better ways of translating the skills students will develop to different job sectors, as well as being seen as a viable major. Next, we have the University of Denver. So this is a standalone department. They have 7 full-time staff, or full-time instructors and 2 full-time staff, and around 47 majors and 32 master's students. And they have a pretty developed, I believe, museum studies program. And their goals are around having more intentional extracurricular activities linked to careers, as well as bringing in their alumni and offering individualized support to students as they build their careers. So really thinking about, for the master students, most of those, there's a pretty clear path, but for undergraduates, what does a career with anthropology look like? So this is a piece that will be included in our upcoming tool around the Departmental Advisory Initiative. And so, as I mentioned, there's sort of 4 different phases to participating in the program. So it starts when departments submit an application. There's a sort of, form that we ask you to fill out, sharing some information about the department. That's available on the website if you are interested in applying for your department. Next, we have our campus visit where we have the intensive discussions. Usually only 2 of us show up. Out of there's 4 of us that are the facilitators. So it's myself, Ryle, Elizabeth, and Susan Squires. And we take turns visiting. The program costs is actually free. The only thing we ask for departments to pay is for our travel expenses, since we're offering our consulting services pro bono. And then the third step here is developing those career readiness goals and developing the implementation plan, and then those quarterly check-ins. Is there anything you'd like to add, Ryle?
No, not really, except just to point out that every single department is different. And that's not news to anybody here, but I mean, we're really seeing how they're different, how different they are, and in what ways they're different. So as a result of all of that, I think the 4 of us are learning an enormous amount about how anthropology is done in US higher education. And the news is partly good and partly not so good. So, we can talk about that at great length at some other time. But right now, we're learning a lot. And I think that the feedback we're getting from these departments is that they're learning a lot too. And so I think it's working out well for all concerned. It's a really interesting program.
Yeah, and there's some really great sort of realizations that have come out of it too, in terms of like just having departments be intentional and have these conversations. One of the groups we usually encourage them to invite from their campus is the career services department to attend some of these brainstorming workshops. And some of the realizations that have come out of that in terms of the resources available that just the departments may have not been familiar with have been really great. So I think it's really a good way to kind of break out of your little silo, and you got the blinders on and be like, hey, look at all these great opportunities around us, even though there may be other challenges facing anthropology in general, which that's going to be the last topic today. All right, any questions around the departmental advisory initiative before we move on? Yes, Cynthia.
I have my contact information if everybody wants to get in touch with me and get to know me more. So that's good. I think it's really amazing. I've studied anthropology in terms of its history and how it developed in the US, and it's really as a non-American, it's refreshing to see that American anthropologists are dedicated and determined to keep anthropology alive in the US, because without that preservation of the important heritage anthropology plays in the United States, it's gonna be lost. And it's really important at a time I am not an American, I have family in the United States, and my fellow immigrant family, part of them are from they have US citizenship, and they tell me about the social problems and all of those things the US has been going through. And anthropology is just key to understanding and to resolve some of these social issues. So it's been really good. And I think in some parts of Canada, like in Montreal and Vancouver and Ontario, and even Edmonton, which is the state or province capital of Alberta, which is the province slash state I live in. It's really strong in anthropology, but in Calgary I don't see a lot. And I think it's quite inspiring for anthropologists living outside of the United States to see, there's been that effort to ensure anthropology is relevant in a time in which anthropologists like Rial Nolan, I think I remember you said the other day that anthropology is like a lock opener. You have multiple things that you open the lock, but then nobody knows that it's only one hand doing it. People think it's multiple hands, so we have to label and identify the hand opening, the lock opener, which opens the lock.
Thanks, Cynthia. Very poetic. I like that. Ryle? Did you want to say something?
Oh, it's just, I had an image that it doesn't matter. When we get into a discussion later on in this meeting, if we have time, I'll explain what Cynthia was referring to.
Mhm.
But it is something that I said, I am guilty of that, yes. Anyway,
All right, well, just to share a few brief updates around our interns, and I think Emma, you're here, so feel free to wave if you'd like. So I want to shout out all of our digital marketing interns' wonderful contributions to our social media presence. If you haven't been following us, go check out LinkedIn and Facebook, and I occasionally put things on Blue Sky when I remember. We also have our Instagram. But on LinkedIn, you should be able to find ACRN's Guide to SFAA. So we've created a special sort of, guide focusing around particularly practice and career-oriented programs. So pretty much we brought in everything ACRN is currently sponsoring, as well as NAPA, WAPA, and our Bing, I think is the new TIG, focused around careers. So there's a wonderful, there's a huge number of great workshops being offered this year. If anybody has time on Saturday, we do have some space, actually a lot of space, and are explaining anthropology to others workshop. So if you are going to be there, maybe consider adding that one to your agenda. But yeah, check out this guide as a tool to kind of find a clear path around those topics at SFAA. Next up, Mara Martinez, she put together a really wonderful series highlighting some of the new instructor tools that we just added, as well as Irene to go along with Ryle's workshop that he gave yesterday in partnership with the Applied Anthropology Network around domains of practice. She put together a few posts highlighting our different career tools. So those possible careers in anthropology, job seeker tools on the website. And they're also chapter 2 in the workbook. All right, and next I'd like to announce our newest volunteer. So I just onboarded her yesterday morning. Priyankshi Dar is joining us from India. She has a master's degree in anthropology and is very interested in getting more into business anthropology and specifically consumer insights. So she's going to be helping us out doing some web research, but probably going into the summer, I'll have her also help with some of the digital marketing aspects as well. And now's your volunteer opportunity. If you are going to be SFAA, we will have a table there or a booth, and we're looking for people to potentially help. Oh, here, I actually sent it to the wrong area. All right, group chat. So I went ahead and dropped a Google Doc link in the chat. We can see about including it with the follow-up email as well. We've got a couple times that I highlighted that we like for sure need somebody as in terms of preferred our priority volunteer times. But feel free to sign up for any of those. I've created kind of like 2 seats since we should have at least 2 chairs at our booth. And feel free to reach out to me if you've got any questions around that. All right, here comes, oh, yes.
Wait, I'm sorry for interrupting. Like I said, I'm sorry for taking up a lot of space in the conversation. So I can't be there to help with the tabling because I haven't booked for the conference. Is there like also any like anything I can help out with promoting, or like is there anything that I can be involved in the conference stuff?
Are you going to be at SFA? Or you said you're not attending?
No.
Okay.
I haven't signed up, but is there anything?
I don't know if there's any digital stuff that you would be able to participate in. I know there are some hybrid aspects, but I think the biggest ask I've got for you and anybody else on this call is feel free to share that guide that I mentioned earlier on your socials with your followers, as well as, obviously sharing any of other posts around our tools or other upcoming events that we've got. So definitely appreciate your help getting the word out. All right, next we're going to move on to association responses to political and economic pressures. So we're going to go over AAA and SAA's responses. For those that are maybe active in some of these working groups, feel free to jump in if you've got anything to add. So first, AAA has put together a working group that's been focusing on developing an advocacy toolkit for departments. So this is something that departments can use as a resource as they think about how to navigate some of the challenges they face at their university. So it includes a sample letter to their provost advocating for anthropology. Might be good to send before your department's ready to close, though. Next, we've got speaking points about what an anthropology department or anthropology education, why an anthropology education matters. Next, we've got several other resources just sort of highlighting, you know, famous anthropologists, you know, different career paths in anthropology that include several ACRN tools, as well as the Snap-a-Shot series that NAPA has put together, and as well as legal resources. And they are going to be holding a town hall. I'm going to assume it's virtual on May 6th, 3 to 5 Eastern, for further brainstorming. So I think we can include any information around that in our upcoming newsletter, since we should hopefully have that by then. Anybody else is anyone here in that working group that wants to add something? Okay. Next, we have SAA. They shared a letter to the members, also emphasizing advocacy. I'll go ahead and read the quote real quickly. Members tell us they want the SAA to respond to government changes to employment, projects, grants, and the stewardship of resources on public lands. We hear you and we want the same things. Collectively, our voice means more when we raise our concerns to the policymakers who have the power to act. Here's what we are doing to help us all so far. Please send us your ideas on what else we might do. So if you're a member of SAA, feel free to send them any additional ideas you have. But the ways they're supporting members, they have virtual support groups as well as their career page and trying to get that populated, mobilizing members around reaching out to their legislators, as well as they're developing a survey around those that have been terminated or put on leave. And they're also going to be offering, I think, some benefits at their upcoming SAA meeting in April, including a free expo pass. Is there anyone that's active in SAA that would like to add anything? Yes, Ed.
I'll just say that the SAA, along with the AAA, are parties to a lawsuit against the Trump administration,
good
which
to know.
started with trying to repeal the change in the national monument boundaries at Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante. And it's quite clear that the current administration has got designs on some other national monuments that have got valuable cultural heritage resources on them. And so this is something that's happening behind the scenes involving subject matter experts in those particular areas, but it is a test of a particular law, the Antiquities Act, that the American Anthropological Association, SAA, and the Archaeological Institute of America were instrumental in getting enacted by Congress back in 1906. And so we have some institutional standing to make sure that its intent is clearly understood in the courts.
Thank you, Ed. That's great news to hear that we're being active in that. Maureen?
Thank you. So if y'all aren't aware, as far as we can figure, about 50% of archaeologists employed in the federal government have been fired. A lot of those have not been rehired. This is a huge blow to archaeology. And the big concern is that the way the regulatory process works in archaeology can't work anymore because those people aren't there. And so I'm one of the people that push for this survey, and I'm going to push SA again because we need to know who's been fired so we make sure that if they are rehired, and I understand that some have been, but we think they're going to be riffed pretty soon,
Yeah.
that we know how much that we've lost. There are major attacks on NEPA and Section 106. And also the leases for the federal buildings. So if you're unaware, the National Park Service's Southeastern Center, which houses 8 million artifacts, its lease was not renewed. It's not clear what's going to happen to those artifacts. This is getting hit at every federal agency. Every one that you can think of, and probably some you haven't thought of, the archaeologists are getting hit very, very hard. So there's a lot of concern, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Maureen. Sherry?
Hi, I think overall, this is a good kind of initiative and this type of capacity building. I've had this discussion with Ryle many times, because we come from the same institution. A lot of anthropologists, maybe especially a lot of faculty, are not experienced with doing this kind of advocacy with higher administration. So I think there's a benefit in people ramping up and learning like some of the talking points and things like that. But I think we also need to add a layer where people would potentially get to practice with experienced folks, whether that's from at SFA, for example, that would easily be, there's a lot of, there's former deans administrators like in the higher ed TIG, or we need to find someone, we need to build in a layer like that, because I think oftentimes you only get one shot to do this. So
Yeah.
there's ramping up and being good at this in the first place so that it's a useful, positive, worthwhile experience, like where something good comes of it. And then in the institutions, there's other things to understand now as everything's so in flux, like we just heard about the federal government, but like some of these universities, whether they're taking a stance of quote unquote institutional neutrality or what some of the state laws are, like we're dealing with all that stuff in Indiana too. So I think the members like getting familiar with this stuff and the base is good just for general capacity building, but I think we also need to help with some deeper expertise so that this goes well, because they're not going to call anthropologist upon anthropologist to come back. So I think the stakes are very high.
Yeah.
Thank
All right. Thank you so much, Sherry. And I'm going to go to my next slide just so we've got it up, because this is really the conversation that we want to have is in light of this, what resources and support do you need? So I think that was a great suggestion, Sherry. Suanna?
Hi all, Suanna Crowley. I just want to highlight, piggybacking on that point, that we actually do have a tool for advocacy. I'm somebody who has been to the Hill a number of times and worked with congressional staff, Senate and representative staff at the congressional level, as well as at the state and local levels. I do a lot of advocacy, and I created a tool, which is part of the repertoire, the portfolio that ACRN has. And there are some very specific ways to do that advocacy with policymakers, with stakeholders. There are adjustments to messages. The culture of that space exists, and it really helps to know something about it as you enter and try to advocate at all kinds of levels. I will also say, as a member of SAA and the chair of the Media Outreach Committee, I'm also trying to push tools and resources to archaeologists in particular about improving their communication skills, improving the general communication skills, and being able to connect better with all kinds of different audiences, seeing those audiences and being able to really message the importance of the field, what we do, and how it contributes to bigger pictures. So I think that part of the systems that I sit in and hear about are really starting to worry about things like 501c3s being threatened with loss of their nonprofit status, zeroing out of budgets so that they don't have to go through the process of diminishing or dismantling agencies or departments. But also thinking about that state level bulwark. Many states already have a lot of preservation laws, excuse me, on the books, and we've got to be able to think about plan A, B, and C for advocating for our field as a whole. So thank you. Happy to answer any questions about advocacy at any time.
Yeah, Suanna is a wonderful resource. We got somebody in the waiting room. So yeah, again, to reiterate, this is going to be our discussion time for the next 20 minutes. I think I need maybe like 1 minute for closing. So in light of all of this, what resources and support do you need, or you foresee potentially your peers needing as well? So we've already got, practice around those talking points, as well as building some muscle around advocacy. And this could be resources that, ACRN could potentially develop, or things that we could just sort of as a community, try and resource. Because there's also, I've noticed a lot of really great offers from I think some city governments, some state governments, as well as I know individual businesses are also offering free services for federal workers that have been impacted. So there's a lot of resources out there. So maybe there's an opportunity to consolidate some of them. Yes, Cynthia.
Sorry for interrupting. You can talk. You can continue to talk. I'm so sorry for interrupting.
Well, do you have a question?
Can I save my question for later? I would like to
Sure.
get to see your perspective, like what's going on in the United States before I can suggest anything from a Canadian perspective.
All right. Good anthropological move. Observe and
So
then analyze.
Can I jump in
Trial.
for just a second? I want to connect something that Suana said to something that Sherry said. Sherry's right. We've had conversations, she and I, about this for years. And here's what I think. I think the suggestion that was made a little bit earlier here about getting some quasi-professional help into some of these departments to teach them how to talk more effectively to their own administrations and so forth. And so it's not just about advocacy itself. It's not just about crafting the narrative. It's not just about making a list of all the wonderful things that anthropology does or has done in the world and will do for your sons and daughters. That's just fine. But if you take a leaf out of people like, I don't know, Saul Alinsky, for example, and people who do community organizing, it's not just the message, it's the tactics that matter.
Mhm.
And tactics are important. And Sherry and I both, I think, understand how clueless some of our colleagues actually are about how to do that. They're experts in their own fields, but they leave that to other people, if you see what I mean. Well, the other people aren't there anymore. And we're going to have to learn fast. So for example, okay, I said a minute ago how much we were learning within ACRN about how departments work by doing this. One of the things I've learned is that some of these departments, and I will not name them because it doesn't really matter, but some of these departments have no idea how their university budgets are drawn up. They don't know where the money comes from, and they don't know who makes decisions about that money. And when we sort of started to realize that, we were all looking at each other going, well, gosh, I mean, shouldn't you find those things out? Shouldn't you know that? Because if you don't know that, you're going to be continually in a sort of a subordinate position. So, I mean, the point is obvious. One of the resources that would be useful for all of us would be to have some people with street smart experience in how to deal with this. Because the administrations in these places are not necessarily our enemies, but they are also not necessarily our friends. And they work in ways that are largely opaque to our departments. And the sooner we can get up to speed and figure out how that works, the better off we're all going to be. There, that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Raul. Suanna?
Unmute. I was just going to say that the American Alliance of Museums, AAM, as well as I believe one of the, I'm going to forget it, maybe it's the Sierra Club. Both of those entities have fabulous off-the-shelf resources, which are basic guidebooks in the kinds of messaging and advocacy and tactics that Raul's talking about. These are findable, downloadable, adaptable for the purposes that you may find yourself in, particularly in crafting one-sheet summaries, case studies, putting together infographics, and having your talking points practiced and ready to go so that you've got both the in-person engagement as well as leave behinds, as well as a protocol for following up with the advocacy policymakers, stakeholders, deans, whoever it turns out to be. So there are knowable and reachable kinds of tools that can be adapted. Some of them are in the advocacy tool that ACRN has already published, but there's more there are more resources closer than you think.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I was going to ask around, like, what are other people doing? You know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of other people in other disciplines that are facing similar challenges and may be already a little ahead of us in terms of the resources and tactics that they've got. So, and I know the Sierra Club's faced a lot of pushback over the history. So, yeah, Sherry.
Yeah, I like the direction of the conversation, and it is reassuring. Like some of these resources I was familiar with, and it's good to hear about others that exist. And I'm wondering, I think there's value in people just, studying on their own and kind of familiarizing with what's out there. I'm wondering, I think sometimes some people learn well, maybe myself included, like I'm wondering if we can have something that's more, in addition to the stuff people read, more like a recording where they could watch one of these interactions, like or a set of these interactions done well. So that's one kind of thing. Three suggestions. That maybe also some kind of again, specifically for anthropology, building off what I think there should be like sort of an FAQ, like next moves, like it's like a chess game. Like somebody's going to ask the next question and being prepared for some of what are going to be the really common questions, like beyond the initial development. Like say it actually goes well and they like go to the next place, I think really helping develop some answers for that. So sometimes I think people might do okay in the first layer and then like they might get in a weird loop, and stuff might go kind of sideways. So that, and then I forgot, there was something else I was thinking of, but at least those two things I think would, oh, I know. Back to the original, I think it was what Ryle said, or maybe you said, Jennifer, like how the departments are so different. Like it's going to be hard. Like either we need, like Lucy from Peanuts, the Ask 5 Cents booth, like either some office hours where people can come and be like, I prepped this and how do you think it is? And like, here's our special issue, like our department's on the verge of being closed or we're being combined with someone, or like whatever's happening. Maybe where they could get a little bit of specialized technical advice and or just a guide for them to sort of navigate. If we can't do that with sort of an office hour, maybe a guide to navigate, like how can you at least like collect up your own context specific
Yeah.
problems, issues, like to layer on, because like again, I think kind of better grappling with this, everybody's situation is similar and different piece would be really, really useful.
That's
Those
great,
things.
Sherry.
But
Yeah, no, those are great ideas. Emily?
Yeah, hi. So speaking of other disciplines, I'm here from linguistics. So I'm part of a group called Linguistics Career Launch. We're trying to do a very similar thing to what you all are doing. We love your resources because, they're kind of different from what we've done, which is a lot of panels and such that are on YouTube. So my question today is, on the one side, we have kind of this assault on departments and the discipline, my discipline, anthropology generally. And we're talking about this advocacy work that departments can do within public communication, also within their own universities. And I'm wondering for you all from the anthropology side, how important do you think the career advocacy component is when doing that advocacy at the university level? So, is it potentially an effective line to advocate to your university that anthropologists get great jobs beyond academia? Are they receptive to that sort of pushback? Those are some of the things that we're thinking about on our side, both as we try to get more into departments as a tool for them that they can use to provide career guidance to their students, but also as something that they can potentially market themselves within the university to say, hey, our students get jobs. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, Suanna, you want to respond?
I was going to say I spent a lot of time in advocacy. I also spent a lot of time in fundraising. And the answer to your question is squarely focused on the alumni fundraising capacity that universities have. And I think that probably with the environment, the ecosystem that we're in right now with threats to universities, you will never witness a push for alumni fundraising like you are about to see, because those universities are going to try to make up funding gaps in every which way that they can. So absolutely, if you're able to advocate and point to successful career paths, successful individuals, universities consider those individuals to be prospects for future fundraising. And those are highly valuable individuals. Just like if you go into a lawmaker's office, they want to know if you are a voting constituent inside of their voting areas. So you can have a special message that's built around those great success stories coming out of your university. It does help with other kinds of messaging and marketing and promotion, but you will see dollar signs in those administrators' eyes as soon as you identify highly successful alumni.
Yeah, and that's like a big focus of the departmental advisory initiative that we do, is really one of the areas that we highlight is the importance of connecting with your alumni and, you know, using them as resources for your current students, but also they could potentially be a resource for the department as well, if you think about it in future funding. Ryle, you look like you want to say something?
Yeah, so what we're learning, okay, is that, and this is just partial, there's all sorts of things, obviously, that come into a discussion like this, but the two things I would point out operate at either end of the educational process. On the intake side, what is going to doom some of these departments is low enrollments, falling enrollments. And so there is concern, to the extent that there is concern, which is not true in all departments. Some departments are relatively oblivious here, but to the extent that there is concern about declining enrollments or low enrollments or whatever you want to call it. So we've started working and developed some actually rather good tools, I think, for helping departments figure out how to address that. And they're very interested in that. At the other end, the idea that anthropology students get great jobs is true. But most departments, believe it or not, do not know where their graduates are. And so they cannot show that to anyone. They can simply talk about it.
Yeah, the linguistics departments don't know where their students are either. So
Right.
I do totally believe
And
that.
so this is so obvious a way to kind of, you know, fix a problem. But it's very hard to get them to do it because they kind of go, well, we're very busy. Who's going to do that? Maybe the secretary can do that. And it gets into one of these discussions, which is just maddening because it's not solving any problem. It's just kind of, you know, rearranging schedules. So anyway, those are the two things I think that I hear as a focus. The third thing and the last thing I would say real briefly is this. Almost all of these departments will talk about some form of quote unquote pressure coming on them. But my hunch is, talking to half a dozen different departments the way I have, is that the pressure that comes is very different in different cases, that every place is kind of its own place, that sometimes the pressure is coming from the provost or the president, sometimes it's coming from the trustees, sometimes it's coming from the state legislature, sometimes it's, you see what I mean? And it's all pressure, but it seems to me we also need to understand the differences between some of these situations. And this idea that was floated a few minutes ago about having a kind of an FAQ clearinghouse, somewhere where people can kind of phone in and say, this is my situation. We may not be able to solve these problems, but I think we need to understand what the range and the depth are of the things that are happening across the country, because that will help us figure out what the patterns are.
It could be something as simple as like a Google Doc where people can consolidate the questions they get and the answers they gave and maybe how successful it was. All right, we've got maybe about 2 more minutes. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Yes, Cynthia?
Yeah, so I think from a Canadian perspective, I think it's important to get the American side of the story. Now, I have to be honest with you, I have to address the elephant in the room. Our two countries are fighting a trade war with each other. Like my host country and your home country are fighting a trade war. And so both sides, like a lot of Canadians don't like the United States, and it's a bit I understand the US is a very diverse country. I know some people in this room might have dual citizenship or have families who have dual citizenship. So like there's no judging of the like there's no one standard American. I think getting the news to Canada is important. Like Canadians need to hear that the Trump administration has been impacting the American people as well. Like, this isn't just happening to us, it's happening to over there and the other side of the 49th parallel. I think I know the US, the way they set up the social system has been very different than the one in Canada. Like the Canadian social system is more centralized, it's more conservative, pro-England leaning than the United States. I mean, the US is the complete opposite. It's like day and night. And I think one thing that I've seen you guys do is kind of like you work as a team, but you also have your own individual resilience. Like that's perfect because the US, like it's a country, but there are these states that they have their own way of doing things. And I think if you just follow that, if you just it's like about being adaptable, like, working as a team, but then having your own front that you're gonna manage. And I think um, it's really nice. I have to admit I am not from America. I have families in the United States. I haven't lived in the United States to tell you how, like, to give you the cultural details of the country. Like, you know best because it's your
Yeah.
country that we're talking about. But I'm willing to help promote and raise the word. And like talk about it among my Canadians, my fellow Canadians. And I know maybe like you can highlight the fact that also I think the same thing might could happen in Canada as well, because Canada is also going to have the same social problems as the United States, because the same trends that we see are happening on both sides of the parallel, like lack of trust in intellectuals. Our societies are becoming politically isolated, socially fragmented. You guys have a big emphasis, like, identity politics. I don't wanna make it decisive here, but identity politics is also happening in Canada, and all of these things that the United States has been undergoing, or like all these social changes in the US, they also happen here in Canada. And I think it's it's the same story, but on a different manifestation. And I think like from a Canadian perspective, it helps to be a bit united. Like, I know the US states they have their own rights, and that's perfect because you guys have like what, 350 million people. Of course, having a central regime can't govern that all. But associations need to be united, and I see that you guys are doing a good job. You're bringing the linguistics group, you're bringing the archaeologist here, you're bringing bioanth, sociocultural anth here, and it helps to kind of be united, especially when you're under attack, because your focus is to survive as a social science like body comprising of 4 different parts.
Yeah.
So that's something that in Canadian history we've always dealt with. Being united. I know we kind of had a few wars here and there between our two countries, but Americans have stayed united in that, and Canadians have stayed united in these difficult times between our countries. And I think it helps to have unity, and also to have sort of moving parts, like autonomy and unity has been very perfect. So I applaud you guys. You guys are doing a good job talking about these changes. I empathize with you a lot, and I salute you guys. You guys are actually braver because like you're in what political activists and advocates in the US have called the belly of the beast. Like, you're inside the system, like the great system, whatever you call it. The US has a good control over the world, and you guys are inside it. You guys are fighting within, and it's hard to go against your own government when you're fighting within. So I really applaud you guys, and I think in Canada we have the same fight with our own government, and we have our own problems as well. But I really applaud your bravery, because you guys are like the Brits, like on the French and the Europeans. You're fighting within the system that has a great influence over the world.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Right.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a country by the people, for the people. Ryle?
No, I was just gonna say, there's been a bunch of good ideas. I think everybody has given me something to think about. I'm gonna talk to some of my people, and I would suggest that all of you, go away and think about, practical things, right? I mean, we can talk to each other till the cows come home about, how we feel about this situation. That's not important. I mean, we feel what we feel. But
If we need a bitch session, we can schedule those too.
it's important to decide what to do. And one size will not fit all, we know that. But I think that we've been trying to help departments come up with specific strategies to get to where they want to go. And I think having more of us involved in thinking about what can be done at various levels will be very, very helpful to all of us. So let's think about that. And the next time we have one of these meetings, let's have some time devoted to some of this as well. But in the meantime, we can talk to each other.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out if you're in the shower and you're like, aha, genius idea, and you want to share with us. Feel free to shoot an email. We'd love to hear from you. And our next meeting will be May 22nd, so save the date. And did you all get your new email? So we'll send out reminders a little more consistently. So hopefully everyone can remember to attend. Well, thank you all. We are at time. So I will see you later. And